Existence endures because simples are immutable.
First, here is the question that frames this answer segment. Should I discard parts of my aesthetic ideal that seem unachievable? Now follows this segment of the answer, separated here for topic segmentation.
Aesthetic embodiment, also known as what we call art. You can put it this way, right? Your aesthetic ideal is the codification of your aspiration. And what is your core aspiration? Your core aspiration is toward uninterrupted enjoyment. So you aspire toward uninterrupted enjoyment. Therefore, you imagine an ideal state of being, which is your aesthetic ideal. And then you begin to reshape the world in the image of your values. That's literally a quote of Ayn Rand, to reshape the world into the image of your values. And so, so art is the first stage in embodying. It takes your aesthetic ideal out of your imagination and superimposes your aesthetic ideal on the world in the form of symbols and, small little icons or, whatever it might be, physical representations of what is meaningful to you, physical representations of small parts and pieces of your aesthetic ideal. You take small parts of it and you make them real in the world, and that is art. That's what art is. It is embodied aesthetics. Now, with respect to the question of trying to sort of keep, I think that, what was it? Killing parts of your aesthetic ideal that you think are unachievable. Yes. Okay. So Ayn Rand had a really interesting idea in the Romantic Manifesto. She discussed the fact that art acts as fuel. Now, she put it as fuel, and that's an interesting way to put it, which is, so she is saying that, okay, Leonard Peikoff puts it this way. He said that you cannot live in the future all the time. You can't live in your imagination thinking about your aesthetic ideal all the time. Because, I don't know what reasons he would have for having said that, but it's true. Whether or not he had a good grounding for that statement, I don't know. But he would say that, well, you do need sometimes to sit down and sample and savor your aesthetic ideal in the present. You need to experience the reality of your aesthetic ideal, so to speak, in the present, even though you haven't achieved it as yet. And how do you do that? That's what art does. Art is how you embody small parts of your aesthetic ideal while you haven't yet achieved the whole big thing. It's a big thing that you're trying to achieve. And you just take small parts of it and you make them real in the world around you so that you can experience them. But it's not just that you're trying to experience your aesthetic ideal. You are also trying to it's ritual. You're also trying to sort of ritually prove to yourself that you are able to make the whole thing real by first making small parts of it real. So you pluck out this small part here, you pluck out that small part there, and you make this part real and that part real in small symbolic ways. And those small symbolic ways that you have managed to externalize and impose your aesthetic ideal on the world around you are like small pieces of proof. You use them as like small pieces of proof of your causal efficacy, of your capability to make the whole thing real eventually. And that's that. So that's what Ayn Rand would call the fuel function of art. But it's what I would call, I would phrase it differently. I wouldn't call it fuel. I would say it's confirmation of causal efficacy. So you prove that I can make this small, tiny piece of it real. Therefore, it's likely I have proof in this tiny piece that I can eventually make the whole thing, the whole big thing, real. And so now, should you discard those parts of your aesthetic ideal that seem daunting or too big? No. You should ritually embody them in art and keep them nearby so that you see that you're able to make this small part here real. Therefore, you should hold on to the whole thing, because the whole thing will eventually become real. In the same way that this small part here became real through your efforts, eventually the whole thing will become real through your efforts. And that's what art is for. So the answer to this, to some person who thinks that maybe they can't do it, or there are parts of it that are unachievable. And you may have some unrealistic things, like literally if you want to teleport, that's just not ontologically possible. But putting aside the ontologically impossible, every other part of your aesthetic ideal, any part of your aesthetic ideal that is not ruled out by the law of identity, can eventually be achieved. And so you should hold on to it. And if you find it difficult to hold on to some parts, then what you need to do is embody it in a symbolic piece of art and use it as a ritual acknowledgement that I can, because I have, in fact, made this small piece real. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Yeah, that was a pretty good answer. Thank you.